Hey, this is Doc Hallaq welcoming you back to Photo and Graphic Workshop. Last time we took you through all of the tools and the interface, the basic interface for Photoshop. I know that was a little bit tedious and wasn't really a whole lot of fun, but today we're going to get into some fun and we're going to start using some tools. Specifically, we're going to use the selection tools. I'm going to show you how those work and we'll review where they're located and dive right into playing with some images. I promised you some fun. Let's go ahead and get into that. What I'm going to first of all show you is Canvas. We're going to start out on Canvas. This is what our modules look like. So if you click modules on the side, that's where you'll end up. What we're going to be doing though is we're going to be working with files. So let's select our files. And in our file folders, we have several other subfolders. We're going to use the image folders. And for today's lesson, we're going to use image folder 02. This is our selection. Okay, so we're going to work with image layers, or our image folder number 2. I would suggest that you go ahead and download that folder until you get it on your desktop. And I've already gone ahead and done that. So let me minimize this. And there I am right there. I'm going to close it. Just got my folder on the desktop, and inside that folder, I've got several different images that we're going to be using for an exercise today, and that I will give you for an exercise to follow up on. But let's go ahead and open up Photoshop and create a new image. So this should look familiar. We have no image, no file here. This is just the brace of the interface. We need a new file. So let's go clear up to the top and select File, New, and we get this window here. And we should be able to go ahead and give this a name. I'm just going to give it Tom's Test. And that's good enough. And then we need to give it a size right here. Document type. Doesn't really matter. We can choose US paper if we want, and look at that. That changes all of our sizes for us. But if we have a custom size, we can go ahead and type in whatever. So let's say we want to make it square. I can just make that width 11 also. Whatever I want to do. Okay, I'm going to actually stick with the 8.5 by 11. And notice my resolution is at 300. That's a good resolution for a print image. For video, there's no need to go above 75 pixels per inch. Sometimes I will go up to maybe 100 because I know I'm going to shrink the image down or enlarge it or something. But 72 pixels per inch for video, that's where I live most of the time. And then for print, 300 pixels per inch. Color mode, I'm going to choose RGB because I move my work into video editing often. But if you're going to print it, you're going to want CMYK color or possibly a lab color. The bitmap is a very low, usually a low resolution image, kind of an older format. We don't use that much. And then if you want something that's grayscale only, you have that option as well. But we like color, so RGB color it is for us. And the background contents I want to make transparent. There we go, and I'll show you what transparent looks like here in just a moment. The rest of these are just fine as defaults, but especially for you video geeks like me out there, if you are going to move this into a video environment, then you may want to change the aspect ratio of your pixel. So if you're going to do 1080 DVC Pro, that's an HD thing. DVC Pro HD is also HD, obviously. A little bit different aspect ratio and resolution. But for today, let's just stick with our square pixels and hit OK. And there's our new document. And you're saying, hey, wait a minute, Doc Hallaq said this was going to be transparent. And now I'm seeing white and gray checkerboards. And guess what? It is transparent. That's exactly what Photoshop tells you with this little checkerboard background. That is transparent. So we're happy with that. We've got a layer over here, and we've got our tools over there. Before we start playing around and drawing, I'm going to go up here to the top ribbon again, image, and image rotation, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. It doesn't really matter if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. It's just fine either way. So now it fits better the aspect ratio of my screen. And that's not really a big deal with Photoshop images, but for our purposes today, it might just come in a little bit more handy. So today we are going to work with our selection tools. We have 3 sets of selection tools. Look at that. Now you can see my cursor just a little bit better. Remember our very first one, this is our move tool. And that's the crosshairs tool that you see right there. That's the most common tool, and it's kind of my default when I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I go into my move tool. But the next 3 tools right after that are selection tools. And if you remember, all of the tools that have that little teeny white triangle on the bottom, the lower right corner, are different tools that are related to the main tool. So we're going to start with our rectangular marquee tool right there. So the very first one on the list. And what that allows us to do is to make a rectangle. You can make it tall, short, fat, squatty, whatever. And notice there it gives us our height and width of the rectangle. What if you wanted to make a perfect square? Then you could then reference the height width flag that comes up there. But that's a little tedious. So to make it a little bit easier, Photoshop will allow you to hit the Shift button while you're mousing down, and that makes it a perfect square. So there we go, there's our perfect square. And now what we can do is what we have done is we've created a boundary. So everything that we do will stay within that boundary or outside of the boundary. You can actually invert that boundary. You can just come up here to select up on your top ribbon and hit inverse. And now you'll notice these little marching ants that we have here. That's what we refer to them. That's not the technical name, but many people refer to them as marching ants. So we see the marching ants here, and then along the outside of the image, we now see marching ants. So let me do that again. I'll invert. Okay, so this is the original selection, just the marching ants inside our document. And then when I go to select and inverse, another set of marching ants appears on the outside edge. And what that tells us is that whatever we're going to change, add, subtract, whatever we're going to do to this document, it's going to happen on the outside of our square, and the inside of our square will be left alone because we've inverted our selection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and select a color. I'm just going to go up here. We have plenty of colors available. We'll have more. I'll show them in just a little bit. So now I've got a red foreground, green background, and with this little bent arrow here, I can flip-flop those. So now green is my foreground, red is my background. I'm going to start with red just because I want to, and I'm going to come down here to my paint bucket tool. It's about halfway down my toolbar. If you're not seeing the paint bucket tool, you might be seeing the gradient tool. They live in the same space and share that space. So if you see the gradient tool, you just click on that little teeny arrow on the lower right, and our paint bucket tool comes up right there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my paint bucket tool. Remember, inside of this square, nothing's going to happen. Outside is where everything's going to happen. So let me click on my paint bucket tool, and there you go. Everything outside of the square filled up. Okay, and that's good. I'm happy with that. And we can see what our rectangular marquee tool does. I'm going to deselect, take away the marching ants, do that, I'm going to hit Command D as in dog. If you're using a PC, you're going to want to use Control D. So Command D, and it's gone, deselected. Now it's time to go to my elliptical marquee, and I'm also going to change my color down here to green, and I'm going to take my elliptical marquee, and inside of my transparent box, I want to make some kind of an ellipsis. Okay, again, I can make it oblong in either direction, fat, skinny, whatever. If I want to make that perfect circle, guess what I'm going to do again? Yeah, you got it. I'm going to hit the Shift key. Perfect circle, and create that circle right there. There we have it. And now I want to fill the inside of that. So I'm not going to inverse my selection. Just going to keep this selection the way it is. I'm going to come back to my paint bucket tool, click inside there, and it fills it right up. Okay, and look at that. Wonderful. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to create another circle. I want a different color. I'm just going to select a different green, a little bit lighter green. Okay, there's my color change again. Usually I just have two colors available to me at any one time, but we do have a whole host of different colors to use. Kind of like drawing with your Crayolas when you were a kid, and your mom told you to put one back in the box when you're finished with it, and you probably didn't remember to do that. So now I've got my paint bucket. I'm going to go back to my elliptical marquee, and I'm going to create another circle. And I want it to be an exact circle, so I'm going to hit my Shift key. This one is just slightly smaller than the first one. That's okay. And I'm going to choose my paint bucket tool again. I'm going to come inside the circle. I'm going to click. Oh, now look what it did there. Isn't that interesting? So it detected the edge of that dark green circle and the marquee tool, and it only filled in this part of the circle. So that can come in kind of handy depending on what kind of design you are working with. Let's remember that. But we want to fill, for now, we want to fill the rest of that circle up with the green. Okay? And then we're going to deselect, get rid of those marching ants, Command D, or if you're on the PC, Control D. Okay, and I don't want to use my paint bucket tool for anything else because nothing's selected, so now the paint bucket tool will go crazy and just fill up the whole space. So back to my Move tool, V on your keyboard if you want to choose the shortcut. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the lasso tools. So lasso tools is the third one down. And again, there is several different options here. We've got a standard lasso tool, we've got a polygon lasso tool, and a magnetic polygon lasso tool. I'm going to show you how to use each one of those. The regular lasso tool is probably one of the least used of the selection tools because it's just kind of a freehand thing, and most of us are not really good freehanding with a mouse. There are some designers out there that will use an electronic tablet pen, but we're not using that today. So there you have the lasso tool. I'll just kind of deselect again. I'm just kind of free-handed around it. It's a little bit sloppy, but you know, if I just want to cut out part of an image, it works just fine. I just want that circle, and I don't care what's around it. I'm going to now copy. So Command C to copy, Command V now to paste, and I have pasted. Look down here on my layers. I have actually pasted that circle again, even though we can't see it. It pasted it right on top. Sometimes it'll do that. Other times it will offset it from its original position. But since I'm pretty sure that I have that, I'm going to hit my Move tool, V, and then I'm just going to move that off and look at it. Look at that. It's right there. Oh, and I got some red along with it. Okay, so that's our lasso tool. little bit sloppy. My next one is a polygon lasso tool. What the polygon lasso tool does is it allows me to make a shape that is made out of straight lines. So I'm going to click and get a straight line. Can you see that there? It's a really thin white line. And I'm going to make some kind of an odd shaped rigmarole here. There's a word you don't hear every day. And notice right here when I close and I meet the end with the beginning, I get that little circle down the lower right of my tool. So I'm just kind of moving it off that for a minute and then back on. You see that circle show up. And that tells me that the end has met the beginning. And if I click right there, then it gets me a closed marquee tool. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, copy. Actually, no, I'm going to cut this, so Command X. I'm going to cut that out. Here you can see the transparency below. And I'm going to paste. And there it pasted in a different position. You can't see the whole thing. So back to my move tool, V on the keyboard. And there's my odd shape that I've got. Okay. So that's what the polygon tool will let you do. You can get pretty elaborate because every time you click, it's going to allow you to change angles. So I can actually get pretty elaborate with the edges shapes. Okay. The next one is the magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool comes in really handy at the right time. What it allows you to do is similar to the regular lasso tool. It will make things out of straight lines, but it will magnetize to the edge of the shape and make several different key points, if you will. So let me just grab this right here. I'll click on that. And then I'm just going to pull my anchor along. You can see all of those key points or anchor points. There's a little line in between each one. And I'm just going to go around. It doesn't matter if I'm real precise. You can see that line is kind of bending there. Now, if I get really way far off, it'll start doing strange things. But as long as I come pretty close to outlining this object, it will lay those points down. And it's going to show me that little circle again when I get back to the beginning. And there it is. I've closed the gap. So now go ahead and click one more time, and it takes effect. Okay, so that's the magnetic lasso tool. That actually comes in quite handy when you're trying to cut out an odd shape. So rather than using the polygon tool to click, 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 click all the time, use your magnetic lasso tool, and it'll let you move right around. Okay? If you've got questions, write them down and send it back to me. I will be happy to answer those questions. We've got one more selection tool to go, though. That's this one right here. In this one, we have an object selection tool, a quick selection tool, and a magic wand. And when I show them to you in this document, because we're dealing with solid flat colors, they're going to all look very similar in what they do. But the object selection tool, oh, I need to deselect, so Command D or Control D on your PC. What this is going to allow me to do is to select an object. And we'll try this one. It is a relatively, oh, that's not going to work. It's a relatively new tool to Photoshop. There we go. Now you can see how you did that. Let me show you once again. I'm just going to make a big rectangle around that object and let go of it, and the edges automatically get found. Okay, so that's what I can do with an object. Let me go back up to my tool, and I'm going to select the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool, what it will do is it uses a brush to identify colors that are within a range of colors. Now, notice right up here, see that 1? That means it's only using a 1 pixel point brush. That's pretty small. So I can either drop into here and use the slider, or the other thing I can do to increase my brush tool is on my keyboard, I'm going to use the square bracket on the right. Square bracket on the right, and there my brush is a little bit larger now. Notice it has a minus symbol right in the middle of it. That's telling me that it's going to take away from any selection that I have. That's not what I want to do because I don't have anything selected right now. So I'm going to come back up to these tools. And this is one thing you'll notice about each of the selection tools is there are different options that lay up here. And every time you change your tool, those options are going to change to some degree. And it's not just the selection tools, it's actually all of your tools in here have different controls or options that you can use. So they'll be changing quite often. I want to choose the Add To, and now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to swipe it around that. And look, it looks like it did pretty much similar as the object selection tool, but it actually did it in a different way. And I'll show you how that works in a moment when we open up our image and start editing. Our next one is the Magic Wand tool. Magic Wand tool will select colors within a range of a selected color on the same image. And one thing that it does, notice our options have changed up here again. One thing that's really handy is this contiguous. Okay, if that is checked, it's only selecting colors that are connected in the same color, depending on its tolerance. And we'll get into that in just a minute. So if I turn that off, and let me go select this dark green, and go back to layer 2. These cutout objects are on layer 2. So, but you'll notice that I can just select almost anywhere, and it recognizes there's a color there. Okay. And it's selecting anything that's contiguous, okay, because I've checked that off. They're non-contiguous. I'm going to check that now. I'm going to deselect. And now, when I select, go up to, when I select that dark green circle, okay, now it's only selecting that shape. It didn't select this dark green if that had been on the same layer and my contiguous box was not checked, it would have identified that as well. Let's go ahead and do that real quickly so you can see how it works. And actually come over to my layers. My bottom layer is selected. I'm going to hit Shift, select the top layer, and now I'm going to right click, and right here I'm going to merge these. And right now, because we're dealing with all layers being visible, and all layers, then each of these will basically do the same thing, which is to flatten the image, taking all 3 of those layers and making them one layer. So there you are. Now we've changed to a single layer with all of these different objects. Notice that this layer changed its name to background, and it put a padlock on there. So it limits the alterations that you can make. Fortunately, most images that we have that pull up this way, we can double click, rename the layer, and hit OK. And the lock goes away, and now we can manipulate it much more than we could have otherwise. So again, on the Magic Wand tool, okay, and all of our layers are now flattened into the same layer. So that means there's bunches of patches of these different dark greens. And my contiguous is turned off. I'm going to check that, and look what it does here. It's selected every place where that dark green is within a tolerance of 20. And now I can cut just that dark green, and I can paste it back. And now those dark green shapes are again on their own layer, but they are in the shape of the selection that we made. Okay, so that's how your Magic Wand works along with its contiguous. You can also adjust the tolerance, and we'll get into that in just a bit. But for now, I'm going to go back to my Move tool, And I'm going to open up another image. So let's slide this out of the way, go back to our image 2 folder. I'm going to open up the green cutting board 2. There are 2 of these. They're both a little bit different from one another. I'm going to take the image icon thumbnail right here. I can drag it right down into Photoshop. So what we're going to do with this image is we are going to separate each of the vegetables from the green cutting board. You'll notice if we come down here, it is one layer. It is called background, has a lock on it, so it will limit the type of edits we can do. Let's go ahead and unlock it by double clicking. And this one, instead of leaving it as layer 0, we'll give it the name of original. Okay, and just click OK. So you'll notice we can see all of the image with a little bit of space around. If we want to enlarge that just a little bit, let's say we want to fill the screen with our image as far as it will go, as magnified as we can get it, then that's what we're going to be going for. If you look down here in the lower left, you can see the percentage of magnification. This one is 66.67, so that tells us it's about 2/3 of its actual size. So if I want to fill the frame with it, what I can do now is hit Command 0, or Control 0 on your PC. So Command 0, that fills it up. That's as much as we can go without losing any of the image. And it's now at 81.3% magnification. If I want it to be 100%, I can just do Command plus, and that will take it up the next notch to 100%. Command minus will take it down 1/3, and 50%, 1/3, or 33%, 25%, so forth. You can even go up higher. There's 200%, 300%, 400%, and so on and so forth. Typically what I will do in your assignments is I will magnify things up to 200% to see the detail. I won't go much further than that, but one step up from 100% so I can see how detailed you've got your work. So just notice that, or note that when you do your own work, that you want to magnify it up to 200% to make sure everything is clean. So our task today is to separate each of these vegetables from the green cutting board using the selection tools. Okay, so I'm going to start with the red pepper, and I'm going to start by using, I think my quick selection tool is probably going to be the best. Look how big that brush is up there. That's the dark circle around the outside. That is the size of our brush. I want that to be smaller. So square bracket on the left makes it a bit smaller. It's a little bit more manageable. I'll come over here and just swipe it like it was a brush. So click and swipe, and it did a pretty good job of selecting most of that. Went a little overboard here, didn't it? So now I'm going to go up here. Remember, all of these controls change with each tool. With the object selection, quick select, and magic wand, they all have something that's relatively similar to this. What you have is the selection itself, adding to the selection, and then subtracting from the selection. Since we went a little overboard with this, I'm going to choose the subtract from selection. I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to increase my size again, my view, Command plus, and notice that my tool now has a minus symbol in the middle of it. It's still a little big, so I'm going to just square bracket again, make it just a little bit smaller. I'm going to swipe over this area that is too much for us. Being careful not to go into the red pepper itself, trying to clean those edges, just like that. Okay, that looks like a pretty good selection. Although if I zoom in here really close, I'm going to be able to see there is a little bit here where we didn't quite get enough. I'm going to show you a little trick on how to change that. with each of your selection tools, one of the options up along your menu is the select and mask. So I'm going to choose the select and mask. The default is a kind of a transparent red overlay. And from this, you can see there's a little bit of green right here. So we missed capturing that part. And there's a little bit of white and green over here. So it's a little bit too large of a selection for us. That's okay, we can deal with that, and I'll show you how to do that. So over here on the bottom part of our controls for this tool, or for these options, we have a smooth. What that does is it smooths the graininess. So look at the pixelization on this edge here. We're going to smooth that out, not a whole lot, 5, 6 right in there. You notice those edges are a little smoother now. They're still pretty pixelized, but look at where we're magnified to. We're magnified at 500%. So we've got to expect some of that pixelization. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to feather that edge. So it's not a harsh edge. It's a little bit soft, but I want to stay under 1 pixel. Okay, right there. So I'm going to do about a 0.7. It's where I usually like to be. There we go. 0.7 feather. You can see that edge is a little bit softer now, but it's still a little bit overgrown here. So the next adjustment I'm going to make is my shift edge. I take this little triangle. Right now it's at 0. I can go to the right and add, make it a little bit bigger. I can go to the left, make it slightly smaller, which will be negative numbers. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try about 13. Oh, it's closer, but I'm still seeing a little bit of edge right there. So let's go down. There's 20, 21. I've got to kind of play a thin line here because we don't want, in those spaces here, or right on the edge, we don't want it cutting off anything significant from that. So to me, that looks pretty good. I recognize there's a little bit of green here. So I'm going to hit OK. And what I could do is I could go in and add just a little bit, but looking at my selection area, I don't think I want to do that. In fact, I want to go back to add. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush. I'm going to try to touch up this little area right here. Just slide along the edge, push that out just a little bit more. And there we go. I'm probably going to do the same thing. Oh, no. No, we're not going to do that same thing. Undo, my favorite tool. All right, so there we are, pretty good. We're going to go now and we're going to cut that out, Command X or Control X on the PC. And there goes, it's gone. We want it back though, so we're going to paste that, Command V, and it pastes it back into my image. It's offset from its original position a bit. But also notice down here, it is its own layer. Okay? It's created a new layer with just that green pepper. I'm going to click the eyeball right there, and it goes away. And click it again, and it comes back. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to rename this layer so I keep all of my layers organized. Double click right here and name this red pepper. And I'm still in my marquee tool or my selection tool. I'm going to hit V, and I'm going to pull that out of the way, set it right over there. I'm going to go back to my original layer, and now what I want is I want some white. See where this red halo is? I want to fix that. I'm not going to worry about the green right now, and you'll see why in just a minute. But so I'm going to go back and click on the little black and white colors right here. So now foreground color black, background color white. I want to flip-flop those. And I want my brush tool. So B for brush. Oh, look at that. It's huge, gigantor. So square bracket on the left makes it smaller. Make it about the same size as my little cursor guy right there. And I'm just going to paint around that edge and see how it goes away. right there. Okay, and that's okay that we've covered some of this up. We actually will get back to that here before we finish this object or finish this exercise. I'm just going to kind of do that right now. Okay. So now we've got our red pepper. I'm going to take a look at the whole screen, Command 0. You can see how we've lifted that pepper up off of the board and just kind of set it aside for now. Now we're going to pick a different vegetable, and I think what I'm going to do is work on that orange pepper. So back to my quick selection tool, and it is teeny tiny again. So I'm going to enlarge it with this square bracket on the right, makes it bigger. Okay. You might need it fairly small for this since those are rings of cut pepper. I'm going to zoom in again, Command plus. And now I'm going to add to selection area. I kind of brush over the orange. I'm going to make my cursor a little bit smaller here. So square bracket left. And selected all that, and we've selected all that. There we go. We've got the outside selected. Some of the inside has been selected, the larger pockets of green. Now what we need to do is get rid of the selection that's covering these green spots. So back to our negative or take away from brush. And this time we're going to need to make it really tiny. So square bracket left. I'm going to go into this transparent, this hole right there. And there we go. And actually I'm going to try our magic wand tool. Tolerance of 20. And oh, too much there, too much there. Actually, what happened is I got on the original layer. Well, that's actually where I'm working. So that's too much tolerance. Bring this down to about 5. Okay. Now, oh, that's still too much. So it looks like our quick selection tool is going to be the best one for us. A little bit more sensitive. There we go. And we've got a couple more spots here. This green area here, little teeny thin green area here. Okay, and I think I've got it. So back up to my selection and mask. This one shows me, oops, I missed a space right there. So cancel out of here. Let's come back and let's get that, swipe that little space right there. Okay, back to my selection and mask. And that looks much better. Again, we're going to smooth. Usually no more than 7. 4 is probably good. Feather, no more than 0.1. And our shift edge, it looks pretty good, but I'm going to bring it in just a little bit. So to the left, negative numbers. That should make it just a little cleaner on the outside here where we're seeing those little spots of green. Okay. Now I could go in and get much more precise in time, but in the interest of time, we're just going to call that good. And again, back to our move tool, okay, just to be safe. V is the move tool. And notice it wants to cut right there. We're going to cut the fast way, Command X, leaving a hole, Command V to paste it on its own layer. And we're on the move tool. Let's go back and rename this. This is the orange pepper. And again, I can move it off out of the way to wherever. Okay. There we go. Actually, I'm going to move that off a little bit more because the next thing I'm going to deal with is this green pepper. So back to my original layer, that's where the green pepper lives. I go back and use that, well, you know what, let's go and use the polygon lasso tool to start this, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to start here, And we're just going to do a straight line until we need to turn a little bit, and then click. Every time you see that red fill up, that is a mouse click. And we're just going to go around, only because I want you to get used to using this tool, get a feel for it. Normally, I would probably still go back to my quick selection tool for something like this. At least this way, that'll give you a little bit of experience using that polygon lasso tool. And here we're getting some more straight lines for longer periods of time where we can just cruise along here. And now we've got a curvature, so lots of clicks, lots of clicks, lots of clicks. Okay, and there we met, and the two met. Just to help me out along this lower line, I'm going to go back to that quick selection tool, and I'm going to see if I can expand that. Oh, way too much, because I'm on negative. I need to change to positive, or add to. I'm going to add just a little bit. That looks pretty good right there. Now I've got a little teeny bit right there, that light green. So I'm going to go back to my take away from. I'm going to zoom in really close to that because it's just a little teeny bump right there. Ever so gently swipe along that. And we've got a little bit of bleeding there. So this is what you can see when you zoom in and magnify. We've got a little bit of bleeding here. Just very gently brush along that. Okay, and the rest of it looks pretty good. So let's go again to our select and mask. And again, we're seeing space on the outside, so that means we're going to shift in. But before we get there, we're going to smooth. We're going to feather. And then let's bring it in just a bit. And I think we're good. Okay, hit OK. There's our selection area. And if we're happy with that, we might be able to do a little bit more. Back to the plus, just right up there. Just a wee bit. There we go. Cut, Command X, and paste, Command V, and use our move tool. And we'll move that off into different space. Just to remind you, hit Command 0 to fill up your screen. And you notice that everything is still in our image. And oh, we've got a layer that hasn't been named. I think that's our green pepper. Sure is. Let's double click and rename it. And I'm going to go back to my red pepper and just move it so it's not touching that cutting board. Green pepper. Now, did you see that? I didn't change layers over here, but Photoshop automatically recognizes when there's not a lot of detail like this. It'll recognize when you click on a particular layer, and it'll move it for you. That's kind of cool. Okay, next thing we need to take on is this cucumber. So again, back to our original layer. We're going to zoom in, Command plus, plus, and maybe one more plus. We're at 300%. That ought to be good. I'm going to go back to my quick selection tool. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. See how tiny it is right there? So square bracket right, and it's got the plus sign in the middle, so it's going to add. So we're just going to swipe here. Got a little too much. We'll come back and fix that. Right here, right here. Now look at all these slices of cucumber. That one you can almost not see. Okay. Brush, brush, brush. Add. I'm getting too much over here. That's okay. We'll come back and fill that in. And there we go. Look at that. Look at that. the outside of that cucumber. Okay, and it's okay if we got a little bit extra, because now we'll go back to our minus. We'll clean this edge up gently here, gently. Okay, gently right there. And let's see if we can clean this up. And we're missing some, so back to our add to selection. Add just a little bit out here, maybe a wee bit more. All right. Oh, we've got too much over here. So back to this take away from. If you do this really quick, if you're zipping right along and speeding with your mouse, it's not going to be quite as precise. So sometimes just slowing down a little bit will make you a little bit more precise. I've got some over here on that white. I can swipe that fairly quickly. I'll smooth this edge out just a little bit. Okay. And we've lost a little bit of selection, so back to our plus. And still a little bit too much. It's really hard when you get little contrast between there. Maybe clean up these edges here just a little bit more. Okay. Very nice. We gotta take some away. Take some away. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Let's go to our select and mask. Take a look at that. That looks like a cucumber without much oddity to it. Now, look at this. Go up and take away. And while we're in this overlay, just a wee bit right there. So let's go ahead and make our adjustments. Smooth out the edges. 5, 6, 7 right in there. Feather just a little bit. Our shifting edge, I think we're probably pretty good. So I'm going to leave that alone for this one and hit OK. And back to our move tool. Cut and paste and move it off of the cutting board space. All right, let's see if we can take care of that knife while we're zoomed in here. So again, I'm going to start with my quick selection tool. Oh, notice it's minus, so go back here and add to selection. Let's pop back out, Command 0. Check that, it's probably our cucumber. Yes, it is. So cuc is what I'm going to name it. Back to my original now, and back to zooming in. Let's position that knife so it's fully in view. And we've got a plus. Let's go ahead and swipe that. Our quick selection tool. Look how nice that is. Okay. Now the underside of this handle is going to be a little bit tricky because it's reflecting the green off of the cutting board. But if we're careful, I think we can get in there, get most of it without getting too much. That's probably pretty good. That actually went quite quickly. Now we can maybe add a little bit over on this other edge. Just brush down long strokes very slowly. And maybe a little bit right there. Okay, that looks nice. Let's do some adjustments. Select and mask. Let's smooth it out. Let's feather it a little bit. Oops, way too much there. And looks like we might need to subtract just a little bit of our edge. So let's make it a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, touch more. It's not going to be perfect. We're zoomed in 300% here. So if it looks pretty good here, it should be fine. And hit OK. Here we go. And cut, Command X, paste. There it is in place. Back to the move tool, V. Now let's rename the layer knife. And back to see the whole image, Command 0. We're in our move tool. Let's move that off. up over there. Okay, now the cilantro and the lettuce are probably going to be our trickiest vegetables. Command plus to zoom in. And let's get the whole celery stalk in the frame. Let's go back to our quick selection tool. To select, got to go back to that original layer. That's important that we're on the right layer. So swipe that. We're going to get more than what we need here. We'll come back and take some away. And here we go, get some smooth edges here. And so I'd rather have a little bit more at this point. There we go. Now let's go back to the take away from option, and we'll start right here. Just a little bit. Fix that. And then we've got a pretty good area here that needs to be taken away from. Another pretty good area here. A couple of times. Right in there. 2 or 3 times. Up here. I'm getting a little bit more precise now. How's that looking for you? A couple of places we need to add a little bit more, so let's go back to our add tool again, our add function. What I'm going to show you is a nifty little trick with the selection tools. You can actually save a selection. So I'm going to select right here and clear down at the bottom. It has a save selection. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to give it a name. This is my celery. Type in celery. Don't need to be all caps. And I'll save that. What I can do is I can go back to my select load selection this time. And right here where it says channel, drop down menu, there's celery. I'll hit OK. It's the exact same selection that I did before. Cut and paste. And now it is its own layer. And now I've only got to, let's see, let me rename that celery. And now I've got to only reselect my cilantro. So I can go ahead and hide my history again. And in the interest of time, I'm going to say I did that. And I'm going to open a new file that I've got where I have moved all of those objects into different places. Okay, so that's our exercise for today. I'm going to show you 2 more images. We're just about out of time. I'm going to show you 2 more images that I'd like you to work on your own. We go back to our folder of images. There's 2, the American Gothic, the very first image. Probably all seen this image somewhere before. It's a very well-known painting. Lots of people have spoofed it as well. Okay, there's our image, and then the very last image right there. I'm going to work the 2 of them. I'm going to just drag this one, and that way it adds it to this this new image that we're making. And notice it's got squares around it. We'll just hit enter, and those go away. Your task for this exercise is to move the image, the painting, inside of the frame. You can change the size of the frame by hitting Command T and then pulling sizes to make it a little bit bigger. So I want the frame outside of the painting, or the painting inside here. You can use whatever tools you want to clear things away, to adjust things, and so forth. So go play with that a little bit. Send it in to me as a Photoshop or a PSD file. That's the way I want you to turn in all of your work. Go ahead and do that, and we'll come back and next time we'll talk about adjusting photos. Thanks so much. And this is Doc Hallaq. I will see you next time.